Thank you very much. Great talks, really enjoyed it. My name is Pablo Navarro. I'd just like the panel to comment a little bit on vertical sea farming, something that I've been reading about as a carbon negative way, multi-species vertical sea farming, that's kelp, mussels, other shellfish, oysters, that kind of stuff. Haven't seen much of it around the province, and it sounded like a good idea.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I wouldn't say have any real expertise or anything to point to. The only thing, the aquaculture can be such a broad industry. If we're talking about shellfish farming, like mussels, for example, I mean they're passive feeders. They're just filtering through the water column. There's not feed that come from industrial fisheries that's trucked in and everything else. So I think it's a good idea, but it depends what we're doing. And some of the biggest considerations around aquaculture actually come from, where does that feed actually come from? Is this fish that's coming off the coast of Peru to make a meal, or what the ingredients are? Obviously, then the transport on the back end. So, mixing, different algae and seaweeds together with fish, can have, balanced environmental effects, because obviously finfish farming have big concerns about the impact on environment, and that can be mitigated by doing that multi-species aquaculture. So I guess as a little bit of kind of context on what I know, I obviously can't answer your question directly, unfortunately, though.
I'll just add a perspective on that. I guess if you look at aquaculture in general, the latest stats I've seen, at least, the FAO estimates that about 40 million tons of aquatic food is going to be required by 2030 just to maintain current per capita seafood consumption, population growth. So that food's got to come from somewhere. So we've talked a lot today about seafood being a relatively low emitter, and we've talked more about wild fisheries because that's the group that we represent. But the aquaculture sector as well, we're largely reaching a ceiling globally on wild fish production. So the growth that's occurring is going to occur in aquaculture. So if you were to do an apples-to-apples comparison of whether it's farm salmon or mussel production or multi-trophic or whatever method you're going to look at, and looking at innovations and technologies always to improve the sustainability, and how that sector looks today is much better than it looked 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and 5 years from now I think it'll look a lot better. But if you take a look at an apples-to-apples comparison and you've got to fill that protein gap, my own personal perspective, I'm far more comfortable and feel far more ethical eating both wild capture fish and aquaculture production than I would going out and having a steak for dinner, as an example. So I think that's the direction things are going. I think aquaculture is the way to go. I think there are improvements that need to be made, of course, continuously on that. But again, if you do a comparison of the environmental impact of other food sectors, I think both wild capture and aquaculture fare quite well, and should be areas that we should focus on continuous improvement towards in the years to come.
Don't go picking on the cattle industry,
Okay,
for God's sake. Agriculture proponents has always got to sacrifice
This is about
agriculture.
decarbonization,
There you go.
folks.
But look, we have I can't call it a pilot project, a serious commercial project right here on our doorstep on Brookfield Road, where tilapia, for example, is being integrated into a farming operation, and it's be interesting for you to go and try to get a tour of that place. But that integration, it's obviously on land. It's not open pen, sea-based fin fishing, which has got other implications. That's very scary. But it integrates into the farming part of, as the water circulates, it adds nutrients to the soil and all these kinds of things. So it's there, and they're right on the preface of starting up. So they're not quite there yet, but I think we'll see more of that in the future, and it does appear to be very successful. And it does have a good, friendly climate change attribute associated with it.
Okay, so we should have had somebody from the aquaculture industry here. There is vertical seafood farming happening in New Brunswick, if you want to know more about it. And one recommendation might be that if the aquaculture industry here is going to decarbonize, they should be doing vertical seafood production. Okay.